Welcome back to The Logic Dilemma, the show where we discuss current events and how sometimes thinking logically can get in the way of our feelings. More on that to come. I'm your host, American Mike, coming to you from the Purple Mountain Majesties, from sea to shining sea, America the Beautiful.
Pennsylvania, I have a message for you. Send me to Congress.
Our president is obsessed with going back to Congress. Listen to this.
Matter of fact, as you walk into my office in the Oval Office in the United States Capitol.
Not only does he want to go back to Congress, he wants his office, the famous Oval Office, in the Capitol building. Obviously, these are just moments of him being confused. We're very used to it. This is something that we've all accepted. We've come to know this very well. Now, the State of the Union was last week. State of the Union, he spoke very well. And he spoke very fast. And he spoke in a way that everybody thought, oh, here's the Biden that we know. There he is. He's not, there aren't any issues here. Now, a lot of people have been speculating why. Because it doesn't match. The person we saw at the State of the Union doesn't match. Listen to this.
Joan Shengang, Shanga, $159 billion left. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him. The idea that Los Angeles and what am I doing here? For two reasons. One, we haven't been able to communicate it in a way that is. Let me say it another way.
Okay, there we go. Now let's compare that to some of the speech that we have from the State of the Union.
Came to office, the country was hit by the worst pandemic and the worst economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear, record losses. Remember the spikes in crime and the murder rate, raging virus that took more than 1 million American lives, of loved ones, millions left behind. A mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable.
Wow, somebody yelled liar there.
I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have. It doesn't make news in 1,000 cities and towns. The American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told. Wall Street didn't build America. They're not bad guys.
Okay, don't pay any attention to the content. It was all fake and it was a lie. The important thing that we have to note is that right after this, Biden went back to the way he spoke before. So yes, the State of the Union was odd. And I think everybody knows it. Even liberal media, they're making fun of people who are saying, oh, you finally noticed that Biden is good. Well, we noticed that he was different. That's the problem. We noticed that he was different. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I wanted to talk about liberals and Democrats, because I've mentioned on this show before that I believe, this is my thought, and you may think differently, but my thought is, I believe the big difference between a liberal and a conservative, or the right or the left, is that most of the time, liberals make decisions and they make assumptions based on emotion. And conservatives are more based on logic. Now, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. Please understand. I'm not saying that, well, the logic one is better. We're far superior. That's not what I'm saying. Remember when we talk about the logic dilemma and what that is. Every choice has to be made with a certain level of logic and emotion in order to make the right choice. So I'm not saying that one is superior to the other, but it is true that the average, everyday, left-wing, liberal, progressive individual, and I don't mean that in a negative way, is more emotional in their decisions than logical. Now, we're going to talk about some cases here, and we'll see if that's true. You can decide for yourself whether or not what I'm saying is right. Now, over the years, I have studied politics my entire adult life, and I have found out that there are two different kinds of liberals. There are. There's the average everyday liberal who wants a better country, wants a better world, wants everybody to be taken care of, wants a clean earth, wants everyone to have the rights that they deserve, and wants everyone to be happy. These are good things. These are good things. But then over the years, I've realized that there is another liberal. It's called the Washington Democrat. The Washington Democrat and the everyday American liberal person are two completely different things. Now, most of the time we just lump them together into one category and we say, well, they're all Democrats. It's not true. You see, going back to what I said before, that the liberals tend to use emotion a lot in the decisions that they make. The Washington Democrat knows this. That's why the Washington Democrat uses fear to get what they want. Now, have you ever noticed this? Let's talk about this a little bit. Have you ever noticed that Democrats are always talking fear? Always. There's always something. If something is fixed, then they move on to the next, and the next, and the next. There is always something to fear. Why is that? There's fear of the earth being destroyed. Fear of Trump. Fear of COVID. Remember COVID? My goodness. COVID lasted years longer than it needed to. It got to, for some reason, and I'm not exactly clear as to how, but for some reason, COVID became this split right down the center, right or left, conservative or liberal, Democrat, Republican. The Republicans wanting to move on early on with the COVID pandemic, and the liberals hanging on to it. And the Democrats in Washington trying to scare everyone. You see? And it got to the point where, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, where if you saw someone wearing a mask, you knew. You knew. I'd see people wearing a mask and I'd say, oh, well, I pretty much know that they voted for old Joe and Kamala Harris because they're wearing a mask. So why is that? That's what I want to dive into right now. I want to talk about why. What are these fear tactics that Washington Democrats are constantly doing in order to get what they want? What are these? You know, years ago, a show called The Simpsons, maybe you know it, they aired an episode where a cute little bear, big bear, I guess, wandered into town and destroyed a mailbox. The bear wasn't hurting anyone, wasn't doing anything to anyone, but it scared everyone. Now, they don't usually get bears in town, and so it scared everyone. They relocated the bear in this television show, and Simpsons, the cartoon Simpsons. So they relocated the bear, and the elected leaders took advantage of the fear that people had to put together what they called Bear Patrol. And Bear Patrol became a huge part of their everyday lives. Because of the fear of the people and because of all the elected leaders, the mayor was able to get people to go along with some of the spending and things that they needed. They were able to put together this enormous government-funded Bear Patrol. They had trucks. They had cars. And they even had, at one point, it shows, they had tanks. They were able to get funding for fighter jets. They had fighter jets that had Bear Patrol on it, canvassing the city. You see, now that's all fun and games. That's just funny. But it shows exactly what Washington Democrats do. They take something that's pretty insignificant and they create a fear among the people who are more prone to choosing with their emotions. They create a fear with the people to get what they want out of Washington. They want money. They want power. They want to stay in power. And they use fear to do that. Now, I know that this happens on both sides of the aisle sometimes. But I'm speaking more along the lines of the Democrats, because a lot of times we'll see conservatives and Republicans, sometimes they do this. And I hate it when they do it too. But for the most part, Republicans are more about hope. What can you gain if we pass this bill? What can we achieve if we pass this bill? These are the words that you hear when we're talking about bills and laws that we see passed. So there usually is a stark difference between the conservative Republican and the liberal Democrat, especially with those in Washington. Now, let's look at some of these fears, because we see this a lot. Fear of climate change. Now, logically, it's been very difficult for me to wrap my head around climate change. I feel like the entire climate change debate is very emotion-based and not logical. I know there's science that backs it, but the problem is some of these individuals are unable to predict the weather next week with any accuracy, and we're expected that they're able to predict the weather in 100 years? That's why we have 30%. Any time you see a weather report for a week in advance, everything is always 30% chance, because we can't predict the weather next week with a great amount of certainty. Yes, we can come within the ballpark, but there's always that little chance. Okay, that's fine. Let's say climate change is emotion-based, and so what? What if I want to believe it? I don't have a problem with that. The problem is that we're wanting to take today's tax dollars and fix a problem that we don't know is actually even going to fix it. Now, going back to my example with The Simpsons, In this Bear Patrol story, they had all of the workers. They had patrols, and they were all had uniforms. They were walking around patrolling to make sure that there were no bears. And Lisa said, the sister, asked her father, "Is this even helping?" And he said, "Well, you don't see any bear, do you?" And she said, "Well, no, but by that logic, I guess you could say that this little inanimate object keeps away tigers." And he then, is goofy about it and says, starts worrying about tigers all of a sudden. But the idea is they never see bear, but when they put all of that money into it, now they're able to say, well, now we're keeping bear away. They didn't have a bear problem. So it's very likely that they may have never seen a bear again, even if they never spent the money. And that's what they were trying to point out. And that's the way I feel with climate change. We're going to spend and bankrupt everything we've worked for. For what? We don't even know if it's actually going to happen. And in fact, there's been so much science that has shown that things aren't necessarily panning out the way that we've thought for the past 20 years. Things aren't necessarily headed in the direction Al Gore thought it was. You see, we don't know if spending money is actually even going to change anything we do. But the Washington Democrat knows that. They aren't worried about climate change. They're not. Al Gore isn't worried about climate change. What he is worried about is that his investments that he makes, and all of Washington Democrats, well, I can't even say Democrats, even Republicans do this. All the investments they make, we need to make sure that those investments in green energy and clean technologies pay out. So we're going to make sure that everybody moves toward that direction. It's true. Most Washington politicians do invest in clean energy because they're passing bills to make us go that direction. How do you think they're making their money? They don't make tons of money in Congress, but yet they're all millionaires somehow. So not all of them. There are honest ones. But that's what I'm trying to get at. We have no idea if climate change is actually going to work or be a thing. So why would we put all this money into it now? Because Democrats are trying to get you to put money into things they want now. Now, talking about climate change, I'll tell you a little experience I had about climate change. A few years ago, I was doing a lot of research into climate, and I just wanted to see what the temperature was over the course of 100 years in any given area of the world. So I put together a little software program that had a Google map, and you could click on the map and it would show the nearest weather station. At the time, there were over 30,000 weather stations all over the world. And those weather stations and I pulled all of this data from NOAA, from the government. And so as you show that weather station, I want to see over the past 100 years that it's been gathering data at that weather station. I want to see if it really has been trending to be warmer. Now, some of the stations that came up, it did chart out the past 100 years, and the only thing I'm looking at is temperature. I know that there are a lot of algorithms that go into determining climate science. I know. I just wanted to see what the temperature was, and I wanted to chart out the temperature for every day for the 100 years that station was there. So I never found anything that was especially trending upward, but I was talking to a liberal friend of mine, and he is extremely terrified of climate change. At this stage, this was a while ago, so we were still in the global warming phase. We hadn't necessarily changed to the climate change phase. We were still in global warming, so he was terrified of global warming. Terrified. It kept him up at nights. This is like being terrified of the bear in The Simpsons. Hardly ever see bear. But we better worry about it and spend the money to save us anyway. So this kept him up at nights. And we were talking about this, and I was showing him my temperature explorer, and obviously he was skeptical because, again, there are a lot of algorithms and calculations that go into figuring out climate. It's not just temperature, I guess. Honestly, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not a climate scientist, but when I look at over the course of 100 years, I don't see any temperature actually moving, trending upwards. But there were some stations that I did see. Sometimes they trended up, sometimes they trended down. But there were some stations that I did see a trend moving up. And I asked this individual, this liberal friend of mine, I said, why do you think that this station is trending up? I said, look at where this station is. And it was in the middle of a city. But this station had been gathering data for 100 years. And here we are in the middle of a city on the West Coast. It's interesting. So I said, do you think it's likely? And I just asked him this. I said, do you think it's likely that this station was when it was built, obviously, 100 years ago, this station was started to record temperature in the middle of a field, in the middle of nothing. And over the course of 100 years, a city has grown around it. It's still active. It's still recording temperature. So don't you think that given the course of 100 years, this station would tend to trend up in its temperature? It's been surrounded by city now. It's surrounded by concrete, by roads, by cars. Wouldn't you see a trend? Now, this is the case with most of the temperature, the stations that I saw around the world. What started as the stations that are just sitting there in fields grew into suburban and even urban areas. Okay, so I mentioned that. It was just kind of a one-off comment that I had made. He went off and now I learned later that what kept him up at night was wondering, because he came and told me later, he was kept up at night now wondering if the scientists had actually taken that in account. The fact that the stations, which started out in fields, are now in urban areas. Of course you're going to see an increase. Now, it doesn't explain the station. There are a lot of stations out in the oceans. I know it doesn't explain those. But I couldn't find a single station that would show us any sort of a trend that we would warm. So why all the talk about it? Well, because there has to be fear in order for Democrats to get what they want. And you mark my words, if the climate change situation was completely worked out, COVID's done, let's say the earth is no longer going to be destroyed and we're not going to get sick and die. If the fear of Trump was gone, you mark my words, there would be something else. There will always be something else because they use emotion. By what I mean by that are Washington Democrats. They use emotion to try to scare people into getting what they want. They've done it for years. I remember back when Obama was in the White House, and he said it actually didn't come from him. It was from for a while there, his chief of staff was Rahm Emanuel, if you remember this man. Ballerina. He's a ballerina. I'm not meaning that in a derogatory way. That's just, he's a dancer. So Rahm Emanuel, who later became the mayor of Chicago, said, never let a crisis go to waste. I'll never forget that. Never let a crisis go to waste. What he's meaning by that is anytime that there's a problem, we need to capitalize it. We need to use it to get what we want. This was the idea of the Obama administration. It's the idea of the Biden administration. Anytime there's a problem, we need to capitalize it so that we can get what we want. All right, let's move on because we do have a problem. We're going to talk about the border, but we're not talking about it from a standpoint of fear. I'm not trying to scare anybody. We do have a problem at the border, though. But why? As soon as Biden took office, he signed executive orders that essentially led to the opening of the border. And that's true. Now, why did he sign his executive orders? Because he wanted to remove everything that Trump had done. Trump ran on the platform that he was going to close the border. He ran on the platform that he was going to take care of illegal immigration. And yes, I say illegal. I know the Democrats hate that word, but it is illegal for people to cross into our borders. So the first thing Biden does when he gets into office is he closes down he rescinds a lot of the policies that Trump had in place and essentially opened the border. What has transpired since then? It's a disaster. We've had upwards of 7 million immigrants illegally entering the country across the southern border. Well, that's unconstitutional. You see, in the Constitution, it's our right to have safe borders. And we're spending tens of billions of dollars in Ukraine to secure their borders, but we can't secure ours. That's a huge problem that we have in society today. So everybody wonders why did Biden open the borders? And people think, oh, well, obviously it's for votes. Well, that's what most people think, that they're going to take all of these people and turn them into voters. I disagree. I think, illegal immigration is a hot button topic. This is one of those topics that can persuade people to either vote for you or not vote for you. So if they agree with you on immigration, they'll vote for you. If they disagree, they may not vote for you. This is one of those determining topics. So I believe that there are more people in this country who won't vote for Biden because he opened the borders than he would ever gain in votes of those coming across the border. So I think it's useless to do it to open the borders for votes. I think it's completely useless. Listen to Secretary Mayorkas of DHS, because I think they had a different thought in mind.
And I'd like to understand from you what Trump-era immigration policies have been banned, ended, reversed, and if any investigations are underway by you.
So we have rescinded so many Trump immigration policies, it would take so much time to list them.
We have rescinded so many Trump-era immigration policies that it would take too long to list them. Why? Believe it or not, the border was okay with Donald Trump. And I know they had all these stories about all this horror that was happening at the border. None of it was true. Remember, Donald Trump wanted to build a wall along the entire southern border of America. And the liberals hated him for it. But he did a good job of getting it most of the way there. So his whole platform was secure the border. Secure the border, secure the border. That's all he talked about. And the liberals hated him for it. So he did a good job of that. So why did they come into office and on day one, Biden starts signing all of these executive orders? And he signed a lot, more than any other president. And most of the executive orders that he signed was to undo anything Trump has ever done. That's what he did. So you look at this, you've got Mayorkas out there saying, well, this was, 3.5 years ago or so, saying, well, we rescinded all Trump era policies. Oh, okay. The problem is they didn't have anything to put in its place. So they essentially opened the borders. And what I'm learning now is that it is of my opinion that they opened the borders simply because they hate Trump. That's what I'm seeing. You can't open the borders for votes because too many Americans get mad at that and you'll lose votes. You'll lose more than you gain. So they did it because they just didn't want anything that Trump had touched. We don't want anything that Trump had touched. So they rescinded all of that stuff that Trump had put into place and did a pretty good job of it. I don't care what they say. He did a good job of it. It wasn't, they act like it was the worst thing in the world. Listen to Mayorkas again.
To achieving, and quite frankly, are working around the clock to replace the cruelty of the past administration with an orderly, humane, and safe immigration process.
This was 3 years ago.
And it will take time. To put it succinctly, the prior administration dismantled our nation's immigration system in its entirety. When I started 27 days ago, I learned that we did not have the facilities available.
Yes, they did.
To administer the humanitarian laws that our Congress passed years ago. We did not have the personnel,
yes, they did,
policies, procedures, or training to administer those laws. Quite frankly, the entire system was gutted. It takes time to build out of the depths of cruelty that the administration before us established.
Okay, so from that comment, it was gutted. The previous administration did such a poor job. The cruelty. The horrible cruelty that took place. None of that was true. So fast forward now 3 years, and what do we have? Nothing. We have nothing. Talk about gutted. They rescind all of Trump's policies and replace it with nothing. We have states on the southern border that are trying to figure out their own ways of securing their border. It's the federal government's job to do this. And yet we have states on the southern border that are trying to figure it out for themselves. They replace it with nothing. They rescinded Trump's policies because they hate Trump. That's it. Not because it wasn't working, it was. We had perfectly fine immigration with Trump. In fact, a lot of the ICE and all of that, they've talked about, and border, a lot of the border patrol have talked about it was okay with Trump. Could it be better? Of course, it can always be better. But now we fast forward 3 years, and you tell me what's been gutted. You tell me what immigration policies aren't working. Since then, we've had 7 million about people cross from the southern border. Now, what's interesting about this is that people have this idea in their mind that it's the people crossing are the average everyday Mexican family or Central American or South American family where the dad and mom love their kids and they're trying to get them a better life. That exists. I know that exists. But that's only a small portion of what's coming across the border. Just over 2 years ago, Russia invaded Ukraine. 2 years. We've been watching that horror take place. I hate that we have that war going on over there. And a lot of that war is, that's their war. But 2 years ago, I remember when Putin told the U.S. to stay out of it. Remember this? He said, stay out of it. And he even threatened us. He said, you're going to want to stay out of it. Now, obviously, he felt like he could invade Ukraine because of the weakness of America and the weakness of our president. That's obvious. We all know that he waited. He waited until we had a weak president. So he invades Ukraine because he knows what's Biden going to do? Nothing. I mean, go eat your ice cream, old man. But I remember Putin telling us, stay away or else. That's basically what he said. Stay away or else. Stay away from this. Let this happen. And he threatened America. What does this have to do with the border? Well, at the time I thought, oh, crap. How smart is Putin? I don't know. If he was smart, if I was in his position, of course I wouldn't be doing what he's doing, but if I was in his position, but if I was thinking about this, then I would spend the first year and a half of America having open borders, and I would be sending operatives across the border, our southern border. That way, if we tried to stop him, they could hit us from the inside and we wouldn't even know it. And I thought, that's what Putin's doing. I just felt like we have open borders. We're not in a position to be able to help anyone in the world, because they could have been flooding their operatives and their military into our country to hit us from the inside if we try to stop them. You see, this was my first thought. We aren't in a position to help anyone because we aren't safe ourselves. We have had people flooding across the borders that we don't even know. Now, it didn't turn out that way. We've been giving aid. We've been giving different things to Ukraine. We've been helping them. And we haven't paid for it. But the possibility was there. I'm glad it didn't happen that way. I'm glad it didn't. Until I read a report. There are more Chinese nationals coming across our southern border than ever before. Well, guess what? That got me thinking again. Why? Why are China? They're coming from South America, but why are there more Chinese people coming across our southern border than ever before? Our open southern border. Well, now I'm starting to think again that we have a problem. You see, our borders are supposed to be secure. It's the job of the federal government to keep them secure. That's what we're supposed to, that's what the federal government, one of their primary objectives is to keep us safe. An open southern border does not keep us safe. We're not talking about, like I said before, this vision of these amazing, cute little families coming to try to make a living for themselves. Yes, that exists. But that's not all that's coming across the border. We are not safe. Nor are we ever in a position to help anyone else, because we could be hit from the inside. Now, I know this sounds like fear-mongering, and I hate fear-mongering. But our borders are supposed to be secure so that we can help people. So that we can help them. See, when your neighbor's house starts on fire, you're supposed to run over there and help them put it out. You can't do that if your house is on fire. When they go to war, we're supposed to go help because we are America and we are the strongest and the last bit of freedom in the world, of true freedom. We are supposed to help and help others around the world understand the importance of freedom. That's our role. And we can't do that if we're being attacked from the inside, because for the past 4 years, we've had 7 million people cross our borders with whatever they want. We could have conflict elsewhere in the world, and if we try to step in, we could be bombed from the inside. We have no idea. Now, if I was a strategically intelligent military man, that's exactly what I would do. I would first make sure that America can't fight back, or that America can't step into our conflict. And if they do, we hit them from the inside. And all I'd have to do is send everybody. I could send countless people across our southern border. Again, we should be putting out the fires. We can't do that if we have our own one burning. Okay, so whose fault is the open border? Obviously, it's Biden's. There's no doubt about it. We were okay. I know they want somebody to blame, and they try to blame previous administration. Sounds like Obama. The previous administration. the previous administration. But Donald Trump did okay with immigration. I know they're trying to paint this horrible picture of this incredibly terrible immigration system under the incompetence of Donald Trump. It's not true. In reality, they got rid of everything and replaced it with nothing. So whose fault is it? Well, listen to this.
It's long past time to fix it. That's why months ago I instructed my team to begin negotiations with a bipartisan group of senators to seriously and finally fix our immigration system. For months now, that's what they've done. Working around the clock, through the holidays, over the weekends. It's been an extraordinary effort by Senators Lankford, Murphy, and Sinema. The result of all this hard work is a bipartisan agreement that represents the most fair, humane reforms in our immigration system in a long time, and the toughest set of reforms to secure the border ever. Now, all indications are this bill won't even move forward to the Senate floor. Why? A simple reason. Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump thinks it's bad for him politically. Therefore, he doesn't, even though it helps the country, he's not for it. He'd rather weaponize this issue than actually solve it. So for the last 24 hours, he's done nothing, I'm told, but reach out to Republicans in the House and the Senate and threaten them and try to intimidate them to vote against this proposal.
Okay. I find this comical. I do. I can't even believe they had the guts to even say that. 2021. Borders fine. This is basically the message that we were receiving from the Biden administration. 2021. The border's fine. 2022. The border's fine. 2023. The border's fine. 2024. Oh, we have an election this year. Let's go ahead and start taking this serious now. Oh, by the way, it's Donald Trump's fault. Are they? It blows my mind. We're dealing with the dumbest people I've ever seen. Guess what? Donald Trump is against the bill, as a lot of Republicans are, including me. I don't want him to fix it this way either. Do you know why? Because, yes, the bill contains things that will give resources to the border. The same resources they rescinded on day one. Okay? We're talking about giving the border the same resources Biden rescinded on day one. But in true Washington politics fashion, they add so much other garbage to the bill. Why? Why can't we just fix immigration? But they don't. They add other things. They have other things in there. Well, this is our opportunity. Again, never let a crisis go to waste. Remember that from Democrats? Never let a crisis go to waste. This is exactly what this bill is. It's an opportunity for them to receive all that they want. And if we're going to tack it onto this because we can make the Republicans look bad. See, they don't want to fix immigration. No, we just don't want all the other garbage that you put with it. If you just fixed immigration, that's a much different story. So is Donald Trump against this bill? Absolutely he is, as he should be. Because it's not just immigration. It's an opportunity for Democrats to get other things that they want, that they don't need. So you talk about weaponizing this bill? Okay, don't talk to us about that. you're using the bill as an opportunity. But that's what Washington does, right? I guess that's what everybody does. Anyway, so Donald Trump, yes, he is against this bill. Oh, you know what that sound means? It's time for our trivia game. In today's trivia game, we get one question. Here's the question. Let's see if you can get it right. Today's question is, does Biden need a bill to secure the border? Does it need to go through the House? Does it need to go through the Senate? So the question is, does Biden need a bill to secure the border? Well, let me give you a couple seconds to think about that. The answer is no. He doesn't. He doesn't even need the bill to secure the border. And they always say, well, Kamala Harris was asked this just last weekend. Why don't you use executive order to secure the border, to close the border? You used executive order to tear down all of Trump's stuff. So why not use executive order to put it back? And she said, well, there's a process, blah, blah, blah. Kamala Harris talks about how there's a process. We need to follow the process, right? Well, and Kamala Harris, can I just say, what are we doing? Like, what are we thinking with her? I think it's great that we have this historic woman as a vice president. You don't hear about history being made anymore, do you? It's because Kamala Harris is terrible. Oh, by the way, I just thought of something. Cue music. It's time for another trivia. We have one question coming at you. The one question is, who was put in charge of the border? Interesting. Who was put in charge of the border? I'm going to give you a couple seconds to think about that one. The answer is Kamala Harris. That's who was put in charge of the border. Harris. She has gone down there once. She has done nothing. But yet she was put in charge originally. You don't hear about that anymore. It was kind of like one of those instances where you put someone in charge of something at your office and they just don't do it. And so eventually it just goes to someone else. That's what happened. She just refused to do the job. And so eventually, I don't know, maybe it didn't go to anyone else. I don't know. She didn't do it. She was called out on it for the first year or so, I remember. But we don't talk about Kamala Harris being in charge of the border anymore, do we? You know, it's interesting. As a side note, this has nothing to do with the border, but as a side note, Kamala Harris, I feel bad for her. Because, again, we're supposed to be, going back to my thought earlier, she was historic, right? And we don't talk about it making history anymore. We don't talk about it being historic anymore. You know why? Because she's the classic example that a male chauvinist pig would point to as to why you wouldn't want women in politics. Now, that's not me. I want women in politics. I don't care. But she's the embodiment of how bad people who don't want women in politics, how bad it can be. She embodies how terrible it could be. She's like making every male chauvinist pig's point out there. Anyway, so back to the border. So here we have Kamala Harris talking about how we want to follow process. We don't want to use executive action. We want to follow process. Well, why follow process? I'll tell you why they want to follow process, because they don't get anything else out of executive order and executive action. They don't get all those little goodies that come along with the bill. They want the bill because the bill has the extra crap that they don't need, that they think they do. That's why they won't use executive action. If Biden wanted to close the border, if he wanted to secure the border, he could do so right now in the Oval Office, which is not in the U.S. Capitol building, by the way, President Biden. It's in the White House, President Biden. Anyway, he could do it right now. He could sit down at his desk in the White House and sign executive orders to close the border. But we don't get all that good stuff. You know what else you don't get? You don't get the opportunity to try to make Republicans look bad. You don't get that either. So executive orders don't give you the opportunity to talk trash about the Republicans. So I guess there's that. See, they need to stop blaming. And Biden and Kamala Harris, they need to stop blaming the Republicans for an open border. Number one, it's closed with us. That's one of our platforms. And number two, you could close it at any moment. And you won't. Well, maybe they don't understand it. Maybe they need to listen to this show. The most genius show out there, obviously. Maybe they need to listen to this so that they know how to run the country. Because, quite frankly, I feel like I could do a better job. And I'm just a guy. You know, this brings me back to a point that we made in a previous episode. Why Biden? Of all the people in America, why Biden? The Democrats, the 350 million people in this country, and he's the best they've got. Why? And on that terrible note, I will be leaving you. This is American Mike for The Logic Dilemma. Be sure to like us, subscribe. Oh, and don't forget...
Pennsylvania, I have a message for you. Send me to Congress.
Send him to Congress. Thanks, everyone.